Morning, everyone. That's not loud enough. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, that's nice. That's nice. A little bit of energy. So, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I'll not have any, green screens and typing any code. So it's just a few videos, me talking, some slides in the background, and hopefully some jokes. Maybe you'll like them, maybe you won't. I don't know. We'll see about that. As long as I can get this PPT to work. Okay, that's good. So there are three things that I would like you to leave with after this session. The first is that Infosys as a company, as an organization, as a global SI, is very serious about open source and taking it to its client base. The second is that there is a modernization practice within Infosys that is acting as a catalyst to make that happen. And the third, maybe the most important, is that the modernization practice is obviously working with a partner ecosystem, bringing it to bear for our clients, but also is interested in recruiting some good brains. So if you're interested, do talk to me after this session, right? So the vantage point that we have is, so we are part of application services, which is the largest service line in the company, about $3.6 billion. And as I said, we act as a catalyst. So we are about 340, 350 strong, all of them architects and technologists, right? So one thing is for sure, in the last 3 years, 3.5 years, we've seen a major uptick in the adoption of open source across our client base. So much so that 60% of the companies use open source for application IT modernization, right? And about 60% say that monolith systems on legacy technologies are a big concern for them. And that's the cost and the complexity of managing them is actually the driver for modernization, right? But this was not the case always. As I said, things have started picking up in the last 3 years. This is an example of an RFP that we were responding to 3 years back, where the client explicitly said, no open source. Now, a lot of criticism against global SIs, especially the Indian heritage ones, is that we don't cross-question the client, we are order takers. Well, that's not true, right? So we said, why aren't you considering open source, right? And we had a series of discussions, and guess what? That clause in the RFP, right, was taken off. And in the end, we actually had at least 4 or 5 places in the whole stack where we implemented open source. But that was 3 years back. Now, there are a lot of organizations that actually take open source first as an approach, the moment they are looking to modernize their applications. So here is an interesting video I want to play for you, and then I'll have some things to share about that. Let's see if I can get it to.
How can an enterprise learn from nature? How can it sense, respond, and act like a living organism while navigating the twists and turns of a complex world? How can an enterprise become a live enterprise? These are the core questions we are creating solutions for ourselves and for our clients. At Infosys, we are transforming into a digital native organization using the Infosys Live Enterprise Suite, an enterprise that is connected, observable, responsive, sentient, and continuously learning. We have reimagined our processes, our experience, our ecosystem, while also being sustainable. Now imagine what the Infosys Live Enterprise Suite can do for you. You'll have the flexibility of a startup. Insights will be more actionable. Your entire enterprise will be acting like an organism, flowing and adapting in real time. Now is the time to start transforming into a live enterprise. See how Infosys can help you navigate your next.
One thing I want to make clear is that, yeah, it's a nice marketing video, but it's reality. So we have 165,000 Infosys employees that are using their mobile phones to learn pretty much any technology that is available under the sun that we offer services on. So that's the learning or lex part, right? The second, the most important thing is that it's not about just the customer experience. When people think about digital, a lot of times the thing that comes to mind is it's the customers who are paying, but it's also the employees, the internal stakeholders, their experience is equally important. So the Infosys Live Enterprise is about how can the employee experience change phenomenally, right? Be that connected. So 165,000 employees having a mobile phone, they should be able to do pretty much everything in terms of the regular approvals, workflows, applying for leave, immigration, visa, claims, the entire set of workflows that is there, you can actually do it on the phone, right? And learning as well as figuring out whom to talk to within the enterprise. So this whole connected, sentient enterprise, how to get to the right people to get the right help, right? Amongst the other things. So all of that is on open source. Completely open source, right? And that is what we are taking to our clients. Let's look at an example. So how many people are aware of GSTN? Some? None? I hope more than how many hands are going up. I hope there are more than that in the, so if you're not, then here are some statistics to make you understand how big or massive this application is, right? So in terms of tax collections, the 151 billion US dollars of taxes have been collected in the last 18 months. Peak concurrent users is 110,000, right? And all of this is with a 0 RPO and a 30 minutes RTO. And the allowable downtime across the year is 15 minutes, right? Now that whole GSTN application is completely on open source. So if a client says, I don't know if my mission critical application can run on open source, so you just put these numbers up there and whatever they have just pales in significance, right? So this is just to, if anybody in this audience had a doubt, this is what open source can do. But I think it's more preaching to the choir because, anyway, this is a Postgres conference. But the adoption maturity varies. It's not the same across different industry segments. So I have this interesting quip. What makes you think some industries are going faster than others in adopting open source? Cost is obviously there, but it's a question of fire. I don't know. I don't think any of you were there at the Red Hat. Yeah, you had something to say? Excellent. Yeah, excellent. So that's more like fire in the mind, like you're passionate, or fire in the belly, right? All of those are definitely important, but fire at the backside is the most important part, right? And I think none of you were at the Red Hat conference because I'm reusing this joke, but that's entirely true. So the industries that you see who are using open source a whole lot actually have competitive pressures, right? And pressure on the top line or on the bottom line more than that they feel much more than some of the other industries, right? But what are the challenges that clients see when they adopt open source? So the first thing is, what's a best fit solution? So there are a lot of choices that clients have. But guess what? They sometimes get swayed by the people that they have within their own IS organization, the IT organization. So if they know a particular technology, they will try to drive the choices towards that, right? It may be a good option, may not be, right? But that's all they know, so that's all that they will suggest. The second is a little bit tricky, and I have to sort of do a tightrope walk on that, is product vendors. Well, guess what? If they have X, they will sell X. They will not talk about Y, right? That's where a global SI comes in. That's the honest answer to that, right? So we need to help clients make the right choices. And it's not easy. It's not easy because of all these things. The second is a cost-neutral adoption. Nobody wants to listen to that the price tag is high, this is a fantastic stack, but it's going to cost more. Now they already have the problem with Infosys as well as some of our clients is they have enough and more investments in an infrastructure already. So how do you come out of it in a cost-neutral manner is the question. The third is about this whole complex partner ecosystem. How do you bring 5, 7, 10 partners for a large transformation program seamlessly to the client is the question. And obviously there is this question of, do we do it on-prem, on cloud? What's the best fit cloud strategy? The last one is also important. So sometimes clients say, that's good. You did it for this application. How about the rest 300? So you need to have adoption at scale and a factory-based approach in getting things done. So how do we do it in Infosys? What are we doing to catalyze this whole movement for our clients? First is, in the last 12 months, we've had 32,000 unique, as in 32,000 employees. They may have done one or more trainings, certifications on open source, right? That's a mind-boggling number. We have about 6,300 projects that have one or more open source components in it, right? And in a small way, I know we don't have contributors of that level, but we've started contributing on the periphery to a number of communities, and we just made the start. I think it will take at least 1 or 2 more years for it to start going into the tens of thousands and contributing in a major way. But as a practice, as I said, the modernization practice, the fundamental fact is that even large SIs are very siloed. So are the clients at times, right? And as I said, we have partisans. So I know it's Postgres, so the elephant thing fits in a little better, but it's true. So the thing is that a lot of times architects and technologists have a very narrow view into the world, right? So when the client has to make that best fit decision, you need people, architects, who can see much beyond just a narrow view, right? So you need breadth and you need depth. It's not easy to get. We don't find people in the market, we have to build it ourselves, right? For the most part. Now, here is the, it goes without saying, in the last 2 years, 2 to 3 years, it's the database layer that's seeing a whole lot more changes, shifts, and innovation, right? And Postgres is at the center of it. I'll be honest, in terms of clients evaluating, asking for, or the requests that come, or the projects that we bid for, or we participate, Postgres is actually 80%, that's the database that is under consideration. I know it may not be the most popular per se on the ranking sites, but in enterprise customers, for some very obvious reasons that I think all of you know, Postgres is more popular, right? But here is the distribution. About 60% is clients trying to migrate off of a proprietary database, right? And 30% is because they're migrating to the cloud, and about 10% is truly greenfield development. That's what we see across the board, right? Now here are some key examples. The first one is so there are 3 examples, 3 continents. The first one is in Asia. It's about Finacle, our core banking product, and it's on EDB Postgres. So we have a few product placements because EDB invited me. So I have to have these shout outs and product placement, like the hero drinking a particular brand of cola, right? But that's the truth. So Finacle, I don't know if you know, but this is a fun fact, 15 to 16% of the banked population of the world actually banks on Finacle. It has that big a adoption base, and this was done entirely on EDB Postgres, and it helps save the client 80% on licensing costs, right? The second one is in Australia, because there is Australian dollars in terms of savings, and that was for a broadband network provider, right? And it's about cost, it's also about performance. They were able to eke 30% better performance from the application. The last one is US. It's an oil field services company, and this application was on rig, monitoring the rig performance. So the savings were $400,000 on every rig. So they'll have hundreds of rigs. So you can imagine the amount of cost savings that they had, right? Now, what do we do? As Infosys, there is obviously things that we do to help clients on that journey. So the first 2 are primarily on the legacy code. So analyzing the legacy code, figuring out and doing an automated conversion as much as possible from the proprietary languages. What we have realized is there is no one-to-one sort of mapping at times, so you need to do a little bit of a pattern matching and apply AI to do it, take it from a 50% automation to about 90% automation. The last one is about making sure that whatever data has it moved properly, and this is about data validation. yes, EDB is a partner of choice for us, and goes without saying. And we have jointly bid in a number of government contracts. We also have a number of mutual clients where we work together. In the end, the promise to clients is about having a 60 to 90% license cost savings, right? And with all the automation that we have, we try to bring in about 30 to 60% savings in the migration effort, and there is minimal vendor lock-in. It can never be zero. It is minimal, right? So the last quote that I have, this is a little bit tricky one, but it's true. I don't know how many people agree with that. Yeah. So don't be too sure about your world. Have a little bit of doubt and explore, right? Just for you as a professional, don't be too siloed in your approach. That's all I had to share. Thank you so much. And if there are a few questions, I can take them. Thank you. Yeah. So, yeah, I heard the question. I don't know if the audience did.
If you can repeat it for the audience.
Sorry? Yeah, for the audience, sure.
Finacle Codebase in C started off with deeply integrated with ProC and Oracle. So when you move to something like Postgres, it's like almost rewriting the whole data access layer. So what are the challenges?
I mean, the challenges are usual. So yeah, it had to be, but I'll be honest. So it is not just about Postgres. So we did it with SQL Server also, right? And we have all these options for clients. But the open source option is EDB Postgres. So yes, a lot of it had to be rewritten. Some part was automated through scripts and pattern matching, as I said. So there are tools that we have written to do the job. But there is a fair bit of, just complete rewrite. I mean, because it can't be done in an automated manner. But there is a simpler answer to that. I can't say that here in the public forum, but I can answer that outside. So there is some rewrite, but obviously there is something in EDB Postgres that allows a lot of the code to run as is. Yes,
yeah.
Mark.
One question, sir. So on the case study, there was a 300 terabytes movement of the data, right? So how did, because there was so much of size limitation on the previous versions of Postgres, and you mentioned about RDS Postgres, it was 32 terabytes or 64 TB previously, right? So how did you manage kind of?
Yeah, I don't know that. I'll be honest, but I can get, if you can meet me after the session, I'll give you my email ID. Why don't you drop me the query? We'll try to answer that.
Yeah, just one. Thank you.
Mark, I don't know if you're allowed to ask me a question. Again, there is an honest, simple answer. The chairman decided. So, Nandan is a big proponent of open source. So when he joined Infosys back, he said, what are we doing on open source? And because of Aadhaar and all that he has brought about, he said, as Infosys, we should also adopt open source as much as possible. Because if you want to take it to clients, the clients will have a question, okay, how about you telling us what you're doing inside? Right? So somehow that story has to come together also. It's not that we are completely off proprietary technologies, but the systems of differentiation and this stakeholder experience, including the employee experience, the customer experience, all of that is on open source. But a sponsor, I mean, in any large organization for a large transformation, you need the sponsor to actually give the vision and then just drive the entire organization, right? That goes without saying. And the more senior the sponsor is, the easier it is to get it done. It goes without saying.
Okay, so now it's good to say that Microsoft maybe has a plan to promote open source or Postgres.
So your question is?
Sorry, so I was saying that so now Infosys has some plan to promote open source or PostgreSQL. Do you have some plan to promote?
We are promoting, right? As I said, that's one of the choices. So when clients, or proactively when we go and pitch to clients to modernize their application landscape, Postgres is an option on the RDBMS side. That is it's an option that we give. And we do this options analysis across the application stack, and based on the architecturally significant requirements, the non-functional requirements of the application, we give them the choices and what is a better fit. But what we do is a techno-commercial decision. See, what happens in SIs most of the times is they do just the technical evaluation and assessment and give the options, right? As if the money is going to come pour in from somewhere, and they're done with those nice boxes. But what our architects do is we do a techno-commercial assessment. So we do the commercial assessment along with that. We say, this is what it's going to cost you. So if you think some other choice is better, but if it's more costly, finally this is the client's prerogative, right? They may still go for it. But we do a techno-commercial decision. That's the important sort of distinction.
Okay, thanks.
Hi. My question is more about how do you make sure that the open source investments that you're doing, how do you make sure they're feasible? As in, a lot of open source developers go through a period of burnout and most projects die down. And then maintainers come later on and then try to revive the project and continue it forward. The problem with open source sustainability is that most enterprises use it, but they don't actually give back to the open source community. Is Infosys taking any measures in terms of either sponsoring open source project or in terms of putting Infosys developers to help and contribute open source projects?
Yeah, so that's a very good question, very valid question. And it's not just Infosys. Actually, some of our clients are also looking to contribute back, right? So there are 2-3 ways we are doing it. So the first one is, I don't know if you saw that numbers, in the last 12 months or so, 12 to 15 months, we've been actively encouraging developers, technical leads, architects within Infosys to go and start contributing. So we have a very well laid out process so that there is no IP leakage, right? Because we have 1,200 clients, 1,300 clients that we service. We don't want anything to land up in a community, right, which does not belong there. So there is enough checks and balances, but we encourage developers within Infosys. What we are also doing is we understand it's at times difficult. So some mentoring, hand-holding is required. So we've approached our partners who have senior contributors to try to mentor some of the architects and tech leads within Infosys to start contributing. But it's not easy. I mean, it's not easy, I'll be honest. It's easier said than done, but it's something that we are seeding and doing. So that's on communities and of where our partners are involved, right? But then it's also about what we develop and open source it. So we have a Infosys Devops platform that we have open sourced, and there are things in the pipeline that we are working with clients. Our clients are at times interested, so we've created this nifty little thing. We want to open source it, right? So there are things like that we are doing with the client base, right? So these are two, and then incentivizing, recognizing people who contribute. So we publish it to the entire community within Infosys, and we have a small write-up, about the individual who has contributed and what they have done, right? So hope that answers your question.
Gautam, my question is in the context of his question and the answer he provided. Don't you think PostgreSQL weak copyleft license, which is BSD clause 3, is the singular cause of why contributions that go back into the code base are not as clear in terms of where you actually as a corporate identify changes, and two, where you don't distinguish between an ICLA versus a CLCA, which means like in the case of Apache, you have an individual contribution acceptable, but not a company contribution, which means no single company can actually dominate. Don't you think that's one of the weaknesses of the code-based license? Guys from Postgres are here, because of which I believe a lot of people, when they want to contribute, it becomes what we call in Hindi as the niyat problem. So they start thinking of the niti, the other part of the story. Your thoughts? Because you said you have very clear-cut process where there should be no IP leakage. You're also using a copyrighted stuff which already has an IP, right?
No, but there is a way to do that, and no, I understand your concern, but I'm not sure that the contributions that we are doing at present would get into, because we're not, a lot of the people are actually not changing the code, right? So it's more validation, requirements, those kind of things. But to be honest, we've not gone there and thought as much on Postgres per se. I mean, we've partnered with EDB a little. We have a few people who were mentored, but it's just downright tough. It's not easy, I'll be honest. So we are making attempts, but I don't think that licensing issue came up. Maybe I'll have to discuss it with the IP team a little more, but I don't think that came up as a concern.
I'd just like to chime in on this as somebody from the open source side. I think that's actually one of the greatest strengths of the project, and I wouldn't consider it a weakness at all. I think the fact that no single company can dominate PostgreSQL is very, very good for the future of PostgreSQL. And I think the fact that it's possible for people to make forks of PostgreSQL is one of the things that has led PostgreSQL to have enormous commercial success. Because if somebody wants to build a business around Postgres, they have the freedom to do that. And they're not limited to just charging for support and services. If they want to, they can charge for the code. If they don't want to, they can charge for the code. If what they do is good, people will use it. If it's not so good, then they won't. And people have a choice.
The only caveat is whoever is forking it and taking it away should contribute back. That's all that there is. Some may not be.
Okay, thank you, Gautam,
Thank you.
for your insights about open source, and especially it's good to see insights.
Thank you. Hopefully I didn't make everybody, or at least the majority were awake till the end.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just wanted to clarify, that the invitation to you is from PGConf India, the PostgreSQL user group. So it's not from any partner.
That's
of
okay.
yours.
Sorry about that.
I mean, just wanted to clarify that.
I appreciate that correction.
Thanks
I take
once
that.
again, and
Thank you. Thank you.